Thank you for joining our session today as we talk about the big question, if it's too late to use federal funding. My name is Courtney Vogel. I am the Director, Product Marketing Manager of Government here at RingCentral. And I wanted to share some insight that we have on federal funding. Let's go ahead and get started for today. So the few things that we want to go ahead and review with everyone is currently the funding that's available. The CARES Act has reached its sunset, and there's new funds that are coming through. So we'll talk about that in a minute, along with the analyst predictions, opportunities to use funds, and then planning for the future. So laying down the foundation, what we have is about 2.2 trillion that was made available through the CARES Act. Now, again, that funding has been sunset, but that did include 150 billion available for state and local agencies. And those expenses were received at the end of 2021. So what is now available for government agencies is the 350 billion available through ARPA, or the American Recovery Plan Act. And specifically out of that, there's 195.3 billion available for capital projects for the state and local agencies. Now on this portion here, and I do have some of my notes set aside to make sure that I'm giving as much accurate information as possible. What I wanted to share is that the State Fiscal Recovery Fund extended the time period with which states could commit and then spend certain types of relief funds. So some of the funds, you have to have your deadlines, your project type, you commit the funds by 2024, but the spending is actually of the funds is by 2026. Now, in addition to the ARPA that is currently available now, we recently had the $1 trillion Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was approved. Now, those funds aren't currently available. The initial funds will start becoming available at the end of 2022, where we expect about 20 billion to be spent. But the bulk of the spend is really going to take place within 2025 to 2027. So the key on here is really to see the funds that are available and understand which are the funds that are right for your agency and how to move forward meeting all of those deadlines. Now, before we do go forward, what I wanted to share some insight that was actually shared on the U.S. Public Sector Predictions 2022 with Rick Parrish, the Vice President, Principal Analyst, and Sam Higgins, Principal Analyst over at Forrester. And on these predictions, what they were sharing is that, first of all, 3/4 of government organizations will fail to transform their CX efforts from reactionary to revolutionary in 2022. And that really is key, because as government agencies are looking to catch up into the private sector and make sure that they are looking at emerging technologies and building the trust with the citizens to make sure that they are meeting those expectations of what the citizens are expecting in the public sector and what they receive in the private sector, it really is key to make sure that these are revolutionary experiences that the citizens are experiencing. And then in addition, another prediction on here is that the anemic government IT will account for a failure to spend 20% of the technology modernization funds. And really this becomes an issue that there's so many priorities that government agencies are trying to balance, that what they need to look at is, where are the priorities? Where should we focus our efforts in on, and how do we make sure that we don't leave funding on the table? And I'm hoping a lot of the insight that we'll share right now, including several of the blogs that we have available on our RingCentral website specific for government, will provide additional steps that your agency can move to be able to move forward. So let's talk first about using the funds. Now, the objectives on here, as we walk through these steps, is that state and local jurisdictions can apply for ARPA funds. So we're talking specifically about ARPA, which is what's currently available, apply directly through the Treasury submission portal. Now, the great thing is the Treasury website provides information and all of the details of what's required to submit the request. And then there's additional directions and details on the Treasury page. So again, if you go to the request funding page, you'll see the information to submit your ARPA funds request. But the challenge on here is the unused ARPA funds that are allocated to local, tribal, and state governments. So, the key on here, and again, I have my trusty guide to go over some of the information as I flip through the details on here. But some of the information that we've researched on here is that local and state governments may not realize all of the funds that can be available in different areas. And we have some information that 20 billion from the act was actually allocated for use with work, education, and health monitoring, and then expansion of technology infrastructure to support a more remote workforce. But the key on here is really understanding the ways, again, going down under the challenges, the way that the funds can be used and directed in certain areas, and then understanding the flexibility behind using the funds, which again, easier said than done in this type of scenario. So as agencies really look forward to move forward in this complicated process, a lot of the keys on here is to make sure that there's the right strategy of how to use the funds. And so there was a research that was taken, or surveys that were taken, conducted through the ICMA in September of 2021 to really talk through of how are these local agencies, how are your peers out there considering the strategies to really leverage the fund management or allocate these funds and use these funds. And what you'll see on here, are all local governments, and that's noted here in red. But you'll see that it's really split up across the board, although hiring and the designation of internal staff to coordinate the overall planning and management of the funds is number one on the local governments. And then when you're looking at the regional collaboration on project management, that came in second for the local governments that are there, followed by hiring external consultants to assist with the planning and the management of funds, and then transferring part or all of your allocation to another entity. So there are different methods that government agencies, local government agencies, state government agencies are taking to make sure that they can manage the funds that are available and get the assistance that they need on here. So the key is to find out what's right for your agency and make sure you have that proper support so you can move forward. Now, on here, we had a little bit more research that we did regarding the way that state governments are utilizing the federal funds. And so information on here, and again, I'm going over to my notes that I have on some of the information and the statistics that we have on here, or more specifically, the examples that we have on here. And this is public information that's out there, is the 4 ways that governments are leveraging COVID funding. So we have the emergency and disaster response, we have the small business credit expansion, the homeowner and rental assistance, and then the infrastructure and technology development. So an example of the emergency and disaster response, what we see on here is a good example is Delaware put $67.8 million toward the purchase of medical equipment and testing supplies, and another $866,000 and change for volunteer fire company assistance. As we move over to the small business credit expansion, another example that we have out here, looking at the impact that the virus has had in the communities. What we see is that Tennessee put $55 million in a specialized agricultural fund to assist businesses in agriculture, food, forestry, and nonprofit agriculture, and Rhode Island put $20 million into a small business loan fund, and another $20 million. That was $20 million the first time and $20 million again in a fund to support hospitality and the tourism industry. So just examples on the states of how that's being used. Moving down to the homeowner and rental assistance, knowing again across the board that financially this has caused an impact for individuals as an addition to the actual agencies. But what we see is the state of Maryland associated $39 million of the Department of Housing and Community Development for various purposes. So it included stabilizing nonprofit programs such as affordable housing, while Pennsylvania used $10 million for homeless assistance programs. So a lot of different options that are out there that states are using, and perhaps some examples that you can look at for your own agency there. And then finally, my sweet spot here are the infrastructure and technology development. So With the ARPA bill, there was another $10 billion that was set aside for capital fund projects that support health, education, and work. And especially as we have the hybrid environment that's staying, it's not leaving anywhere. It's really important that the right technology is in place for the citizens, for your employees, and as a business continuity. So examples that we have for states that utilized the infrastructure and technology development is Alabama. They put 50 million towards hospitals and 50 million towards colleges and universities and another 50 million toward broadband vouchers. Arkansas directed 15.1 million towards its Department of Education to provide emergency COVID relief for school employees. So lots of investment back into the community to make sure the technology is set for the citizens, the departments, and the employees that are within those departments. Now, what's interesting, and I know that I went over the state information, when we're looking at the local communities, what we see on here is that projects under the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Fund, they include water and sewer infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, priorities for local governments and the direct recipients and the non-entitlement units. So public safety, small buildings, houses, neighborhoods are priorities that are taking place on the local side too, and that is what the funding is for. So as I share all of this information, again, really just touching a high level portion, what I want to do is recap with you. Again, we have some really great blogs that are on our website that really go into depth on the ARPA funding that's available, the new infrastructure bill, how to prioritize the IT projects. And I would encourage you to go on to ringcentral.com, look over our blogs, connect with us, let us answer any questions that you have. But as you move forward, what I want to share are these 4 things. The ARPA and infrastructure funding is available. It is not too late to take advantage of federal funding. Second is that the rules and the submissions are on the Treasury website. Take the opportunity to look over that, see the gaps, see perhaps misunderstandings or areas that you didn't realize that may still be available to use for your agency, and look at the different resources that are out there as we transition into number 3 of prioritizing the IT projects. There's a lot of money to leave on the table, but it's important to turn around and prioritize the projects that you have underhand, the perhaps outside consultants that you need to have come in to give you guidance. Really looking at what is right for your agency, what is right for your IT priorities and your IT team, and then set a game plan. Look at what your citizens need for their government to serve their needs. What are the priorities that are there? And then take the steps to move forward. The timing is available, the funds are available, and it's important that as an agency that you are equipped with the steps and the information that you need to move forward and serve your citizens. So with that being said, I want to thank you for, and again, I encourage you to go on our website at ringcentral.com, go to the government blogs, lots of additional information in there, and we would be happy to guide you through this process. Thank you.